Hi, Faith Community Church. This is Pastor Josh back with another daily devotion. And today we're in Matthew chapter 22. And in Matthew chapter 22, Jesus begins with the parable, and then he ends the chapter teaching about the Messiah and who the Messiah would be. And there's a couple of key themes that tie it all together. And so Matthew has them all grouped together, and I think it's going to be really helpful for us. So Jesus begins Matthew 22 with a parable, and he teaches a parable on the kingdom of heaven. Look at what it says in verse 2. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. And he sent out his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding feast, and they were unwilling to come. And again he sent out other slaves, saying, Tell those who have been invited, Behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen, my fatted livestock are all butchered, and everything is ready. Come out to the wedding feast. So you have the king inviting people to this wedding feast for his son, and he sends out message. He doesn't hear back. He sends out another message, a reminder. Verse 5 is this key point. But they paid no attention, and they went their way, one to his own farm, and another to his business. So the people didn't respond to the king's celebration, to his generosity, to his goodness. They paid no attention. Okay, so it was a rejection of what this king had to offer. We come to verse 6, and Jesus really increases just the rejection by saying some of the people were actively hostile to the king and to his messengers. Look at verse 6. It says, The rest seized his slaves and mistreated them and killed them. So rather than just rejecting the king's invitation and not paying attention, some of these people were hostile. Now Jesus was teaching this parable, and he was exposing the people's unbelief, but even some of the people were hostile against him. They didn't want to respond to the king's invitation. They didn't want to respond to God's grace and his goodness to them. And then Jesus says, So the king was enraged, and he sent his enemies, and he destroyed those who were murderers, and he set their city on fire. And then he said to his slaves, The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the main highways, and as many as you find, invite them to the wedding feast. And those slaves went out into the streets, and they gathered together all they found, both evil and good. And the wedding hall was filled with the dinner guests. So the king said, the feast is ready to go. And he sent out his servants saying, Go invite everyone and anyone. Just put the word out and invite them to come. And so lots of people came. They came to this feast. It says that both evil and good, and the wedding hall was filled with the dinner guests. That's an important element to the story. Jesus says that even the good and evil came. But then verse 11 through 14 describes how the king came, and he went to look over the dinner guests. And he saw a man who was there that was not dressed in wedding clothes. And when he said to him, Friend, how did you come here without any wedding clothes? And the king said to his servants, Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen. You see, the king put out this invite for people to come to this wedding feast for his son. But some of the people didn't pay any attention. They couldn't be bothered. Other people were angry, and they mistreated the king's servants. They were hostile to the king. And others came, like this man. He came, he was there, but he didn't belong. He didn't fit in. He didn't prepare. He was just there, and he did not prepare himself. And because of that, he was cast out. This is a parable that illustrates a proper response to God. And Christ says that the kingdom of heaven is just like this. Many are called, but few are chosen. Few respond to the gospel message. This is something with the evangelism team. We go out every week and we do active evangelism, and some people are just too busy to be bothered. They don't want to talk. and they don't want to hear, and they won't respond to you. Other people get angry and they're hostile, and they'll let you know that it's just not that they don't want to be bothered, but they don't believe like you believe. And then we run into other people that will say, yeah, I kind of go to church, and we'll ask, well, what church do you go to? And they can't remember the name of it. They kind of put on kind of a Christian. Oh yeah, I'm a Christian. I go to church, but it's evident from their life that they're not following Christ. They haven't prepared themselves, and that Christ is not a priority. That Christ is kind of a convenience. And that's what we see in this parable. And Jesus goes on from this parable, talks a little bit about the tribute to Caesar and paying taxes, but then Mark combines in this section the Sadducees' dispute with Jesus about the afterlife, and Jesus demonstrates that there is an afterlife. You'll get to read that as you go through. And then the last part of the chapter, he calls them to think, who is the Christ? Who is he? Is he David's son, or is he much more? Is he the Son of God? And that's what Jesus leaves them with. I'm going to leave you with that, because as we look at this chapter, we see the importance of heaven and the afterlife. And that's all tied to responding to the King's Son, responding to Christ. And so today, let's respond to Christ. Let's love him. Let's serve him. Let's trust in him. And let's share him with others. So I hope this is an encouragement to you, and we'll see you next time.